Hello, my friends. Chef Blondie here. You know, it's the middle of February, and we had over 8 inches of snow yesterday, and it's still winter. And so, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be making a recipe from this cookbook here, and it's the Manhattan Clam Chowder. It's one of my favorites, and it's soup season. So let's just concentrate on these soups. And I know you're going to love this one.
Hi, old Fuzzface here. Well, Miss Blondie gets ready to show you the ingredients for this recipe for Manhattan Clam Chowder. I thought I'd share a few notes with you and a couple of things that might be of interest. First of all, my beautiful executive chef Blondie. She outdid herself on this recipe. Actually, when you go to the notes below in the description box, you'll find a link to the recipe, and it's actually 3 recipes in one. She saw that there was a need to make some modifications in some cases. So first of all, there's going to be the standard recipe as it is in the Betty Crocker book, Lost Recipes. That one is simple. Straightforward, you can follow it, no problem. We're going to give you a link to that so you can go right there. The second one is where we've added a couple of extra ingredients. For instance, we've added clam juice instead of just water. And then the third recipe is going to be more for a Lenten style meal without any meat. And so what we've done is we've taken the bacon out and we've made it, we've compensated for it by putting in vegetable broth. Now, at the beginning of this video, you may have seen something about a mystery being solved. Well, what kind of mystery was that? Well, as we were looking at the recipe, something kept hitting in the back of our minds, and we were wondering, this sounds familiar. Well, you look at the name, Manhattan Clam Chowder, and you think to yourself, oh, it must have started in New York City, in Manhattan, of course, maybe in some restaurant. Well, that's not the case. If you take a look at the Betty Crocker cookbook, they have a statement, and I'll read it to you. Cooks in Rhode Island in the late 1800s like to throw tomatoes into clam chowder. Sometime around the mid-20th century, their creation became known as Manhattan Clam Chowder. It resembles New England clam chowder, except tomatoes are used instead of milk or cream. Well, that's odd. How did it become Manhattan Clam Chowder if they started doing it in Rhode Island? So who lived there in Rhode Island and in that portion of New England, and who was coming in? Well, we went and we said, let's take a look at the essential ingredients. Not the seasoning so much, but the essential ingredients. So the first thing we did was we took out most of the seasonings and we put together this small chart. And the chart shows that Manhattan Clam Chowder, first of all, has bacon or salt pork. In other words, a pork product to give it flavor. And it has onion, carrots, potatoes, and sure enough, there are those tomatoes, and then water, or in our case, you can add clam juice or broth. And then maybe a garnish like parsley, and then salt and pepper, and of course, clams. Well, that sounded very much like a recipe that we just showed you in November. And that recipe was Azorean style bean soup with linguiça. Now, Azorean came from the Azores. And as it so happened, in the late 1800s, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, and in that whole section of New England, a lot of people from the Azores were immigrating, including my own grandparents. And then we made a list of all the essential ingredients in the bean soup. And what do they have? Well, first of all, they had linguiça sausage, which is a pork-type sausage that's made in the Azores and in mainland Portugal. The next thing was onion, carrots, potatoes. Oh, and there are those diced tomatoes. Then some broth, parsley, salt and pepper, and then there were the beans. That made it the bean soup. So the difference between the bean soup and the clam chowder, as far as the essential ingredients went, were pretty much the same. And as it goes on, several histories of cooking in that area show that, yes, it was probably the Azorean influence that gave us Manhattan Clam Chowder. And now you have the rest of the story.
Anyway, we're going to be needing, let's see, we'll need 2 cans of clams, diced clams, some canned tomatoes, salt and pepper, 2 potatoes, an onion. The recipe doesn't call for carrot, but I always put carrot in mine. Some celery, salt and pepper, and it calls for 1 cup of water. Normally, I would use a bottle of clam juice, but I don't have one right now, so I'm going to substitute the water and the clam juice for some vegetable broth. And it also calls for diced bacon, but you know, sometimes I like to do just a vegetarian style soup. So that's what we're going to do today. So I hope you join me, and happy cooking. Okay, because I am not using bacon, I need a little bit of oil in here to saute the onions. So I'm going to be using some extra virgin olive oil. And you know, just eyeball it. You know, just whatever you think you're going to need. No, that looks pretty good. Then we're going to need to get these onions in. I'm going to saute them till they're tender, 5-10 minutes or so. Then we'll add the other the vegetables in. You know, and let me know in the comments if you prefer the New England style clam chowder, which is made with some heavy cream, or if you prefer the Manhattan style. You know, let me know. For myself, I usually prefer the Manhattan, but I know my hubby, sous chef over here, he likes the New England style. Onions are nice and soft. So now we're going to add the carrots, potatoes, celery, and carrots. Oh my. And we're going to add our clams and all the juice. I guess you could use fresh clams on this too if you wanted to, if you could find them. All right, and the other can. And then we'll cook this, you know, until the potatoes and the carrots get tender. You know, between 10 and 20 minutes. You just have to look at it and see. There we go. Give this a nice stir, and we're gonna bring it to a simmer, and we'll check it in just a little while and see how the carrots and the potatoes are. I know that I've checked the potatoes and the carrots, and they're tender, and so now we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So we need a can of diced tomatoes, 14-15 ounces. We're going to pour those in. Yep, well, then we're going to add, it's about a 1/4 teaspoon of dried thyme. If you have fresh, that's good too. And a little bit of parsley. some salt, to taste. And some pepper. We're going to bring this to a boil and let it simmer for just a little while, just to blend all the flavors in. It looks pretty good. And then today I made some homemade spelt bread, and we'll be having that with our clam chowder. Okay, my friends, our Manhattan Clam Chowder is done. It doesn't take long. It's a simple soup to make. And it looks delicious. It smells great. And I had some homemade spelt bread I did this morning to go with it. So first of all, let's just taste the broth and see what we have here. Delicious, delicious. The clam flavor just comes through, and it's just wonderful. And the vegetables, perfectly done. Like I say, this is one of my favorite soups to make on these cold, wintry, snowy days. And like I say, let me know in the comments if you prefer Manhattan-style clam chowder or New England clam chowder. And if you have recipe for New England clam chowder, let me know that too. Yummy. Happy cooking.